It's Wednesday, the 14th of February 2024. Welcome to the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, we have 5 stories in 5 minutes to get through, so let's get cracking. Story number 1 is an absolute ripper. This is staggering. More than 150 Australian Taxation Office officials, ATO officials, have been investigated over a GST fraud scheme, with some staff sacked and others facing ongoing criminal investigations.
The so-called TikTok GST fraud involved TikTok accounts that allegedly promoted GST fraud. Essentially, there were videos on TikTok explaining how people could get the tax office to deliver money directly into their account. Facilitators then emerged who promised to help people gain the free cash by handing over their personal details. This was used to invent fake businesses with their own ABNs, which then submitted fake business activity statements to claim GST refunds. There have also been more than 100 arrests outside the ATO, and 16 people have received a criminal conviction. Now, 9 months ago, the ATO said about $850 million was involved in this, 40,000 Australians. Yesterday, it came out with a new report saying $2 billion in primary liabilities have been raised since the crackdown got underway, with $2.7 billion in suspected GST refunds stopped before payment. TikTok, for its part, has been cooperating with the tax office. It's banned more than 60 accounts thus far.
Sean, the numbers with this are just huge. 2 questions for you, 2 very quick questions. Have they stopped the fraud, and how did they figure it out in the first place?
Good questions, Michael. An Auditor General's report released yesterday found that the ATO's management and oversight of fraud control arrangements for GST is lacking, and its internal risk framework is not fit for purpose. Not promising. Also, according to a report in the Financial Review, accountants in Western Sydney, where the fraud went viral in mid-2021, have found new examples in recent tax returns, suggesting that it's still going on. It actually came to light after banks, led by Westpac, noticed unusually large payments going into the accounts of customers, particularly those whose main source of income were welfare payments. The bank then got in touch with the ATO, and this is what's unravelled.
Sean, on to story number 2. How about this? The Macquarie banker who earned $58 million last year is leaving the group, just as the bank says earnings might not be as good this fiscal year.
Nick O'Kane, who holds the honour, if that's what you want to call it, of being the highest paid employee in Australia, is off to pursue opportunities outside of Macquarie. Well, if I earned that much money last year, I reckon I'd do the same thing. O'Kane will step down as head of the Commodities and Global Markets Division, which last year reported a $6 billion net profit after Russia invaded Ukraine, boosting commodity prices. O'Kane's pay packet last year was close to twice that of his boss, Macquarie's CEO Shamara Wickramanayaka, about 8 times the size of the boss of Commonwealth Bank. The announcement came as Macquarie released a third quarter update. Basically, net profit year to date is down from last year. Macquarie's share price ended lower yesterday.
Sean, story number 3, consumer sentiment has rebounded to a 20-month high as the outlook for interest rates went from rises to falls.
Yes, the Westpac Melbourne Institute Consumer Sentiment Index rose to its highest level since mid-2022, about time. Rebounding from levels normally associated with a recession, consumers are happier about the outlook for rates and rejigged stage 3 tax cuts, although that latter wasn't a universal plus for survey respondents. About 2 in 5 consumers still expect another interest rate hike. About 1/4 think the next move will be down. Among businesses, conditions fell below their long-run average last month and confidence is weak. So we've had consumers getting happier and businesses getting sadder. Business conditions are now running just below their long-run average. Business confidence is well below the long-run average, but at least it's improving. In terms of details, input cost growth with little change, labour costs with little change. That's all good news. Bottom line basically is while there are still price pressures in the economy, these are expected to ease throughout the rest of 2024. Good news for interest rates.
Sean, story number 4, big news yesterday. One of Australia's largest coal power stations suffered a major outage, sending wholesale electricity prices soaring and triggering concern about grid stability in Victoria.
AGL Energy's Loy Yang A went offline shortly after 2 p.m. local time, and wholesale electricity prices immediately spiked. By about mid-afternoon, around 400,000 people had lost power. The outage of Victoria's largest electricity generator resulted in authorities moving to shed their demand for power. It did occur during the day when demand from households is lower, though the weather was very hot in Victoria yesterday. Funnily enough, it comes just weeks after electricity demand on the grid in that state hit a record low due to rooftop solar generation. Just shows what a precarious power market we have, Michael.
Yeah, certainly does. Last story, Sean. Story number 5. This week's Super Bowl. We knew it was going to be popular, especially with Taylor Swift there, but it brought in the largest audience ever for a single US network with 123.4 million viewers, according to broadcaster CBS.
Yep, up 7% from last year. The number included 120 million viewers on the CBS network and Paramount Plus, which is the streaming service of the parent of CBS. Probably the largest viewership ever, though. The Apollo moon landing in 1969 was estimated to have drawn a TV audience of between 125 million and 150 million people in the US. Now, the population back then was just 200 million. As I'm sure everyone knows, Kansas City Chiefs beat the San Francisco 49ers in overtime, but the number from the game I like best is 16 million. That's the number of people expected to skip work the day after Super Bowl on what's known as the least productive workday in the year for the US.
There we go, the top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Wednesday, the 14th of February, 2024. Remember to hit follow on the podcast. And if 5 minutes isn't enough, you can find our longer daily show called Fear and Greed Business News, wherever you listen to podcasts. And today is Wednesday, which means there's a new episode of How Do They Afford That out, which is our sister podcast all about making your money work harder for you. Today's episode is a great one, really an introduction to investing in shares. It is about the best apps to use to get involved in some of the terminology, some of the terms and words that you're going to encounter and what it all means. You can find that where you listen to podcasts as well, and I'll put a link in today's show notes. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.